Welcome everybody to the session on disruptive technologies empowering decision-making in the public sector. So first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Sonia Bilbao and I work in Tecnalia, which is the largest applied research and technological development center in Spain. My work in the past years has been focused on interoperability and semantic technologies in different domains, and jointly with Isabel Matranga, who will chair this session. So Isabel, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Isabel Matranga. I work for Engineering, which is a digital transformation company based mainly in Italy, but worldwide. And I am Chief Communication Officer for the R&D department in Engineering. And I will be taking care of the panel set part of the session later on. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you. So in this session, we will have 4 keynote speeches from different European projects: URBANITE, DECIDO and POLICYCLOUD. They will share with us the results and experiences from some cities and regions that are adopting a data-driven approach to support public administrations and policymakers in better understanding the current context and making more efficient policy-related decisions. Next, we will have a panel discussion with these experts, and to finally conclude from the results of these discussions. Let me introduce you our 4 experts. We've got Yusef Petchurya from Engineering, presenting URBANITE, Iñaki Alabarreta from Tecnalia, presenting URBANITE and URBANITE, Francesco from the Lisbon Council, presenting DECIDO. Sorry. Oops. And Samuel Baroni from Majoli SPA, presenting POLICYCLOUD. I hope you enjoyed the session, and feel free to post your questions in the question and answer box. We will address each of the questions after each of the keynote speeches. So our first speaker is Yusef Petchurya. He's senior researcher in engineering. He got his master's degree in computer science engineering from the University of Palermo in April 2006. And after the first experience at CNR, he started to work at Engineering, where he has been involved in several Italian and European projects. Currently, he's participating in tailored URBANITE and URBANITE projects. Yusef, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia and Isabel, for this opportunity. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I don't know if you can see it. Okay, thank you for this opportunity. So I'm going to present the URBANAGE Horizon 2020 project. This project is focused on disruptive technologies and includes 12 partners around Europe. It's a 3-year project, already started in 2021, and it's tested in 3 European cities and regions, because we have 3 pilots implementation of the results of the projects are located in Santander, in Helsinki, and in the Flanders region. So the main research topic of URBANAGE is around the urban planning, and in particular the introduction of disruptive technologies and adoption of disruptive technologies for this purpose. And in particular, the technologies that are taken into account are mainly artificial intelligence and big data analytics, as well as the urban digital twin. The project takes into account, in doing this, particular target group of people, that is the older adults, and its aim is to introducing these kind of technologies to enhance the urban planning, having in mind the needs of this group of people. So the project trying to answer some questions about, as I said, the introduction of this kind of technologies, such as big data analytics, artificial intelligence, to provide a more age-friendly environment and take into account the needs of the stakeholder in the decision-making processes. And in doing this, aims to focus also on data management to understand how to better capture and manage the data that could come from various data sources in order to implement and to feed algorithms and simulations for what concern artificial intelligence, and put all these elements together to build a urban digital twin that will be able to connect city-related information, building the city information model from multiple data sources, and to develop new advanced solutions. Here, the main objective of the project is indeed to assess the potential benefits, risk, and impact of this kind of technologies in the decision-making processes, having in mind the perspective of both decision makers, civil servants, as well as citizens. As I said, the aim of the project it wants to build analytics models, simulations, so for provide more age-friendly environments, having in mind the needs of age-friendly aged people when planning the urban spaces, the streets, the public spaces, and so on, to provide better services for this kind of citizens. And it approached the problem having in mind two dimensions, one in the short term and one in the long term. In the short term, the project aims to provide solutions that would allow to make more informed decisions, having tools that allow to assess the impact of decision or to compare different decisions, and on the other side to allow better communication with the citizens, and on the other side the long term that's put together more advanced functions such as simulations, calculation of the indexes that indicates, that provide an estimation of how much friendly could be solutions or the current situations in the cities. In this way, to support both the activities of the public servants and the cities, the decision makers, when planning strategies or solutions for urban planning or for policy definitions. On the other side, this is also involved citizens, so the end user at the end, through co-creations and feedback loop collection. So the project, as I said previously, has three use cases. One in Santander, the other in Flanders region, and the last one in Helsinki. That focuses on the difference of this process of the decision making and the introduction of disruptive technologies in the urban areas for urban planning. For each of these two use case scenario has been developed, one in the short term and one in the long term. For in the case of Santander, the short-term scenario is focused for age-friendly route planner, something similar for the Flanders region, where we have support tools that allow to identify green comfort zones around the cities to support the daily life of aged people. And on the other side, as I mentioned, the long-term scenarios. In the case of Santander, the simulation of long-term tools that allow to simulate the long-term impact of it. In these specific cases, would like to drive your attention on this specific use case where we identified for each of them, of course, some characteristics. So why we are, what are the decisions that drove us in this sense. So In particular, in the case of Santander, the pains was characterized by the availability of information, but that comes from different sources. That's this drive to difficulties in making decisions, leveraging the data. So the purpose will be to provide a unique access point, so that's provide access, uniform access to this information. That would allow us to implement analysis, simulation, that would result in the end in a urban digital in supporting the decision makers. Thank you.
I don't know if there are any questions on the chat. No, for the moment. Okay, so let's move to our second speaker, Iñaki Alabarrieta. He is MSc and PhD in computational physics from the University of British Columbia in Canada. A postdoc in the Herron Institute for Theoretical Physics in Louisiana State University, and currently, since 2006, he is a researcher in Technalia, where he has focused on the study and analysis of mobility data, specifically in pattern recognition and prediction, and is the scientific director of the Smart Mobility Lab, a research laboratory for mobility solutions. Iñaki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sonia, for this kind introduction. I hope you can hear me, and I'm going to share my screen. Today I'm going to talk about the project called URBANITE, and this project is related to decision making in the urban transformation field using disruptive technologies and participatory approach. So the objective, as the name says, is to facilitate the policy decision-making processes in the context of mobility and urban transformation, with a scalable, integrated, and modular ICT ecosystem built upon disruptive technologies. And this objective, which is a little bit cumbersome, I find it a little bit cumbersome. Basically, the objective of the project is to help the decision makers in order to build the right policies for every city. The use cases where we are going to implement this project, or we are actually doing it right now, is one of the cities is Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, we are going to focus, or we are focusing in the cyclists, because I mean everybody knows that Amsterdam has a lot of cyclists within the city, and it's a very important type of mobility within the city. But also we are going to go ahead, and we are going to do estimations on how the city is going to evolve, because on the north of Amsterdam there's a big area being developed, and it's expected to have a very high growth in populations, and that is going to have a crucial impact in how the people, the citizens move around the city. Bilbao is also one of the use cases. Bilbao is located on the north of Spain, and in a region called the Basque Country. And here we are going to focus, I'm going to explain later on a couple of examples of Bilbao itself, but one of the use cases that we are going to study is we are going to study how a closure of one of the main squares within the city, within the city center, is going to affect at the mobility. Well, the aim of the city hall in this case is to close for the car traffic, for the private cars going through this main artery within the city. Then we have Helsinki. Helsinki, there's also a big area in the city. In this case, it's close to the docks, where it's going to be, or it's being developed as we speak, and there's also a big transformation within the city. With the help of the tools that we are developing in URBANITE, we expect to figure out what are the best policies that can be taken into account this growth in this development in this area. And finally, Messina. Messina also has several peculiarities. We are going to study what is the best way of improving or changing, modifying the public transportation, the buses, lines, and so on and so forth. And what is the impact within the mobility in the city. But also we are going to consider things like, for instance, here in Messina, there's a strong importance of the ferry arrivals. This also happens in the previous use case in Helsinki. I forgot to mention, but in these two cases, like the mobility of citizens through the ferries, through the ships is very important. As you can see, there's a lot of partners in this project. Technalia also is engineering, that the previous speaker was also involved in this project, but Fraunhofer, obviously city halls are involved, and well, I mean, you can see all the logos of the companies. I don't want to forget anybody because everybody is important. So the technologies that we are using, and one of the technologies which is key in this project, is the traffic simulation. We are talking specifically about macroscopic traffic modeling. You can see an example of these simulations here. This is for the use case of Bilbao, and you could see how the individual agents are moving within the city. Is important in order to be able to analyze not only the car traffic, but also public transportation, bicycles, pedestrians, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of things that you need to take into account, like the traffic network, of course, but also we need information about the population and so on and so forth. As I say, this is one of the key, or I should say the key technology, but it's not the only one, because we are using many more technologies, of course. Some of the technologies that we are using are related to data cleaning. I mean, this is also very important, because every data scientist or everybody who has to analyze data knows that the data is usually dirty and empty, ugly. I don't know. I mean, it's disgusting. And we have to actually pre-process the data in order to be able to use it efficiently. Of course, once the data is clean, we need to actually store the data. For that is also very, very important to use big data technologies, not only in order to insert the data, but to store and to be able to process. I just have put some, for instance, MongoDB is one of the technologies that we use, but we use many other big data technologies. And in terms of processing, I'm going to give an example of the regression methods. This actually let us make predictions into the future of what the data is telling us, considering different factors. For instance, the weather, the calendar. If there are events, we can actually make predictions of what is the more likely result according to one of the parameters, and the history of those data that we have stored. Well, we are also using not only traffic simulation, but also noise simulation. Noise has a lot of impact within cities, especially the traffic has. We are also using optimization, because once if we are looking for a policy a particular policy, we want to figure out what is the best policy, and in order to do that, we use optimization techniques, and always, and this is something that I try to translate to my co-workers also, is very important to use techniques for visualization, because the data needs to be visualized, and we need to have an idea what's going on at every step in the process. And also very important is something that we are developing in this project, is we are building things like confidence methods to know how much we can trust on the progression of the artificial intelligence methods that we build. A couple of examples of what are the things that we do in the project. And this one has to do with the processing of the data. In this case, we are developing a tool that tell us where the people that jump into a bus actually leave the bus. The problem here comes because at least in the case of Bilbao, in the use case of Bilbao, the bus system only checks when the passengers get into the bus, but not when they leave. And if you want to take decisions about if the buses are running perfectly, or if you want to plan a new bus line or something like that, you want to have all the data available. One of the things that we are computing here is we are estimating where the people, the passengers that enter the bus at one a given bus stop, in which of the buses, the following buses stops, they actually live. In order to do that, and this is something very key in this particular module, is that we are using the information from the smart data. But we also use other type of data, like what is the schedule for the buses and the network, weather, calendar, events, and so on and so forth. And finally, I just want to give you a little bit more information about what is one of the use cases that I mentioned for Bilbao is the closure of one of the main arteries. This is the square that is being considered for closure for the private cars. And in this case, the data that we are using in order to build the simulations are not only the road network, but also things like the origin destination matrices, but information about population, traffic counts, weather, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of data that we need to provide to the traffic simulator in order to obtain the results. And that's all I have to say. Sonia, I don't know if there's any question, any comment.
Thank you, Iñaki. Very interesting. Any question from the audience? No? Okay. If not, we can move to our third speaker, Francesco Muredu from the Lisbon Council. Francesco is an analyst and strategist in innovation and technology policies. During his career, he has supported and in many cases driven the design and delivery of consultancy and research projects in a wide variety of topics, including the impact of digital transformation, big data and artificial intelligence, e-government, smart cities, ICT-enabled social innovation, future science, citizen science, and research and innovation policies and health. He is currently Senior Director at the Belgian think tank Lisbon Council. And Francesco, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So my name is Francesco Muredu. I am Senior Director at the Lisbon Council, and I'm going to present an overview of the project DECIDO, Evidence and Cloud for More Informed and Effective Policy Making. So DECIDO is funded by the European Commission by the program Horizon 2020. It's funded under the call DT Governance 12, and that started on the 1st of March 2021, and it's gonna end on the 29th of February 2024. It's an innovation action, and the focus of the project is mostly on evidence-based policy making and cloud. There are 14 partners overall in the project. The lead partner, the coordinator is engineering, Ingegneria SPA. And the other partners include research centers like Fraunhofer Focus, Technalia, Research and Technology Organization, let's say, university like the University of Applied Science, CAMC, and National Technical University of Athens. Other foundations like EGI and the Lisbon Council and the K people. And finally, the project pilots are the City of Turin, Volto Volontariato Torino, Kajanin Kaupunki, which is the region Kajanin, and Ibercivis. And we have finally also business representative, which is Ernst & Young. So the background of the project is based on the policy cycle, and especially on the use of the data and data technologies and big data and cloud for monitoring policies and solving societal challenges. So the tools are used in the phases of the policy cycles, like agenda setting, policy formulation, policy implementation, and monitoring, and policy evaluation. So the scope of the project is basically to show that the impact of innovative technologies, tools, and data can help to develop more evidence-based public policies by public authorities. And in this sense, DECIDO it's basically trying to set up a bridge between the public sector, the citizen science world, and the European cloud infrastructure through the direct collaboration of the European cloud, European Open Science Cloud that is represented by the EGI and its infrastructure. So there are mainly three objectives. So one is to create a bridge, as I said, between public authorities and the European Open Science Cloud. The second one is to use the European Open Science Cloud infrastructure services and data, and to make them available to the public authorities. The third is to encourage public authorities to use services, infrastructure, and data methodologies to improve the evidence-based policy-making activities internally. And basically, the idea of the project is also to identify a set of recommendations, business plan, impact pathways, in order to show what public authorities can do by using the technologies and the data and the methodologies provided by the project itself. So the output of the project will basically be three. One is going to be the web portal, which will be used to define, manage, and evaluate the public authorities' policies. And the web portal will work in collaboration with the European Open Science Cloud, catalog and marketplace, all the European Open Science Cloud services, and also data providers like the European Public Data Portal and public administrations themselves. A second output is going to be the involvement of local actors through citizen science activities. So this will take place from the methodological side through the co-creation of indicators, evaluation indicators, for instance, identification of needs and priorities a priori in the project, and data generation through citizen science activities. And finally, the project is going to produce a business plan that will be backed up by a cost-benefit analysis of the ex-ante and ex-post activities of using the project. The data are collected, as we said, from databases that are already available from IoT, satellite, and for public administration. So the data are collected, analyzed, and they are used in the policy making activities, while the co-creation activities are mostly leveraged in order to develop the pilot services. There are mainly 4 applications. One on forest fires in Kajaani in Finland. So the objective is to prevent and protect against forest fires in order to mitigate the damage to human life and animal life, infrastructure, and nature. The second one is the pilot on floods in Mesino Park in Turin, Italy. So the idea is to improve the design of emergency policies related to floods and weather alerts. The third pilot is on power outages in Greek municipalities. So the main objective is to manage power outage of public infrastructure and cultural assets of Greek municipalities via emergency response mechanisms. And the final pilot is on the wildfires in the Aragon region, Spain. In this case, we aim to improve the design of emergency policies related to the management of controlled fires and the mitigation of the impact of wildfires. So specifically, the project has developed a methodology for using data to implement the decision-making process, following a set of steps. So starting from storytelling and data collection related to needs and challenges, understanding what are the services that the European Open Science Cloud can provide, then defining the DECIDO catalog of data available and to be available, also defining what are the data coming from co-creation activities and how can those data selected can be used. And finally, the project aims to develop and implement algorithms to analyze those data and to provide the results of the analytics in visual analytics dashboard that can be used to take decision. And the final step is obviously, as we said, to improve policies based on evidence and facts. So the project has collected a series of needs and challenges for the public administration in using data for better policy making activities. For instance, one is the typical problem of employees that do not want to be trained in new technologies, or that have problems, resistance in implementing co-creation solutions. Be compliant with GDPR legislation and with data privacy. So the solution provided its data privacy impact assessment, the lack of data, and in this case, the solution we provide is the DECIDO data catalog, and find available resources. In this case, we leverage. That's why we leverage on the EOSC services and infrastructure. So the project also has defined expected impacts for each stakeholder groups. So policymakers, as we said, will be able to reduce the time needed to generate good quality services, and they will be able to improve policymaking services. Citizens will actively participate and contribute to policymaking activities and will have higher data access, so there will be also more transparency. Businesses will reduce the cost to generate innovation and will accelerate their innovation and business development activities. And the research centers will be accessing a larger volume of data for scientific and research purposes. Thank you for your attention. And please, questions are welcome.
While we wait for questions, I would like to add something. So DECIDO has been is involved in the data-driven policy cluster Because I read a few days ago the policy briefs that were published by this cluster, and I found them very interesting. So maybe we can share on the chat just to give a higher, wider view of the activities performed in the cluster, which sees not only DECIDO as a project, but there's also POLICYCLOUD that we will be hearing from in the next presentation. And then there are AI for public policy, Duet project, and Intelcom. Is that right, Francesco?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I also have a question. I was wondering when can we expect another policy brief with interesting insights?
Well, we just produced 3 policy briefs, so I think for the moment we are fine.
Okay.
The idea is to produce a set of policy briefs at the end of each year. But the good news is that we are going to apply for a panel, so a set of presentations within the scope of the conference Data for Policy, which will be taking place on the 13th of December. Well, actually, the conference is taking place globally in 3 locations, and I am chair of I'm one of the global chairs and chair of the regional committee for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And so let's say the EMEA branch of the conference will take place on the 13th of December. So the cluster will be represented, duly represented there for sure.
Okay, so thank you very much. We will wait for some news from the cluster.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco and Isabel. Now, our last speaker is Samuele Baroni from Majoli. Samuel is a project manager specialized in Horizon Europe and Horizon 2020 programs, with experience in other European programs such as LIFE and Digital Europe. Thanks to the 5 years experience in the IT sector, Samuel is working as EU project manager for Majoli, which is the leading Italian provider of IT infrastructure for the public administration, focusing on IT for sustainability, mobility, big data, and artificial intelligence. Samuel, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Thank you very much, Isabel. I hope you can see my presentation. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Samuele Baroni from Majoli SPA. As Sonia was saying, we are a leading IT company serving the public administration in Italy, local, regional, and national government. I will present today the POLICYCLOUD project, which are very proud of being partners since it focuses on the public administration IT infrastructure. In a nutshell, POLICYCLOUD is developing an integrated cloud-based environment for data-driven policy management. So we're more focusing on the policymakers' point of view. We try to help policymakers. This environment will provide decision support to public authorities for policy modeling, implementation, and simulation through identified population, as well as for policy enforcement and adaptation. These technologies will optimize the policy across sectors by utilizing the analyzed interlinked datasets and assessing the impact of policies while considering different properties and population segmentation in order to ensure high impact of the proposed policies. We are trying to create a holistic framework, a complete framework, in order to help a policymaker in the process of creating a policy from the beginning, from the really beginning to the end of the process. So from the data collection to the analysis, the different analysis that you can do on the data, to the KPIs and parameter decision, to the validation of the policy afterwards. As you may imagine, it is a complex framework to create, so it has different layers. We have the backend, for example, where the info is stored and it can be retrieved. We have analytical tools that are also external to the platform. All these elements are communicating with each other in order to create this holistic solution for the policymakers. I gave you here a brief description of the two main front-end assets. So there, it's just the assets that the users are utilizing to profit of the platform, which are the policy modeling editor or PME and the policy development toolkit or PDT. The user will first access the policy modeling editor, which allows him to create new policies and edit existing ones following the evaluation process. So the user can create a new policy, give KPIs and parameters to what he wants to create. We are also implementing a different granularity for the different positions that may one institution may have. So some users can implement or edit a policy while others cannot. We are trying to give a complete solution on this sense. And once the policy is created with all the parameters that we are asking to the user, it can then the user can then go to the policy development toolkit, which consists of the validation part of the system. So in the PDT, the user can validate its own policy and retrieve analytics, visualize it in different kind of charts that we created, so he can be sure if the policy that he created is aligned on his KPIs or if there are modifications to make. The POLICYCLOUD consortium has 3 use cases at the moment. The first one is policies against radicalization, which is the one led by Mazzoli in Italy, that I will detail further in the next slides. And then we have intelligent policies for the food value chain, which take place in Spain, in the Aragon region, and it mainly affects the wine value chain. And then the urban policy making in Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, where we're interested in road transportation, mobility, signaling, air pollution, and all the policies linked to this to the mobility sector in Sofia. As I said, Mazzoli is responsible for use case 1, policies against radicalization, which wants to reduce the occurrence of domestic radicalization by early identifying warning signals and risks from social media and other data sources. We are doing this effort in close collaboration with the Regione Lombardia, which is one of the most, let's say, important regions in Italy concerning the population, which is 10 million people, and also the GDP, which is 1/5 of the whole Italian GDP. To give you a perspective, Lombardy is where Milan is located, in the northwest of Italy. And since it is a rich and demographically important region, radicalization, both political and religious, is spreading a lot in this region in the last years. So the policymakers need to have evidence-based policymaking to approach it in a serious manner. We are implementing different scenarios in this use case. The first being one about radicalized incidents, in which we created a heat map tool, which is congregating data from the global terrorism database and the RAND terrorism database. In these heat maps that can be, of course, filtered by years or region or occurrence or type of accidents, etc., and wants to investigate the occurrence of radicalization incidents in a given area following the implementation of a policy, and understand if the said policy is still valid or need to be updated. So, as I said, it is a validation. This is the PDT part, and we want to validate policies with this kind of tools. that we give to policymakers. Another scenario that we are focusing on with Regione Lombardia. I didn't say that we are working with Regione Lombardia in a co-creation approach. We had a lot of meetings with them. We are still having meetings, even if our project just 6 months from the end of the project, but we're still having meetings with them in order to apply their suggestions to the platform, to have a better user interface if they need it, to have other tools if they need them, because we do really think that this our project should focus on policymakers and their needs, and so we are co-designing the platform with the policymaker, in particular with the Regione Lombardia, but also a local police station in our case. So the scenario about radicalized group and individuals it also uses GTD and RAN database because they are public available data, so we didn't risk to go into privacy faults, let's say. This scenario wants to identify the main actors, so individuals, groups that are involved in radicalized incidents or propaganda spreading through online and offline activities. The policymaker here can select keywords in order to identify the individuals or groups and consider the different incidents that are linked to each one of them. This scenario is also important because it feeds, let's say, the third scenario that I'm going to present, which is an analysis on social media that we are doing also with the keywords and the groups and individuals that we are identifying in this scenario. So they're linked, these scenarios. The third scenarios that I'm presenting today is about trend analysis on social media, where we want to understand the current and future trends of radicalization efforts through, as I said, keyword detection, new entity recognition, and new terms identification. Here, we give the policymaker the possibility to select the keywords of interest and to consult the different information linked to them in order to validate existing policies and investigate if there is a need to adjust or update them to create a new one based on the retrieved information. So this is in the sense that I was talking about going into the policymaker perspective and try to help them to create evidence-based policies on these radicalization issues. We are using data coming from Twitter and Reddit for the moment because it was requested from Regione Lombardia, but of course it can be also expanded into other social media or internet content general. I just focus on our scenario, but of course, if you have any question, we can talk about also other scenarios or the project in general. Thank you for your attention. Please go and check our website and social media for POLICYCLOUD. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Samuel. I think we have a shy audience that doesn't make a lot of questions, but anyway, I know that after all these exciting and promising results, Isabel also has some interesting questions for these experts. But anyway, if in the audience anyone wants to ask any question, feel free to use the chat and we will give answer to your doubts. Thank you, Isabel. Now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sonia. Well, first of all, I would like to thank all the speakers. Very interesting presentation and interesting work that you are performing. So what I found interesting when I saw your presentation is that actually there is a lot of work being done towards the introduction of and the analysis of data-based decision-making. And it's all done sort of from different angles and in different domains. So we've seen the last presentation on radicalization and also other use cases, urban mobility, age-friendly, urban environments, disaster risk management. So I think it's really a lot of work and a lot of interesting results coming from these projects. So thank you very much. We start our second part of this session with a panel. So I invite all speakers to turn their videos on. Hi, thank you, Iñaki. Giuseppe. So we have the same speakers that you saw just now, so I will not present them again. Okay, so my first question for you is, so according to the experiences that you've had in the projects, maybe not only the ones you presented today, so what is the attitude or the feedback you get from civil servants or public administrations regarding the use of disruptive technologies that you've been talking about and of data in decision making? So whoever would like to start, just turn your mic on. Don't be shy as the audience, please.
Well, I have something to say, yes. Whenever I talk to people about the disruptive, and in particular, I'm talking about artificial intelligence, I find that the people think that they can solve absolutely everything with it. It's like this is technology is going to come and it's going to do everything. But I mean, and of course, artificial intelligence can do a lot of things. But you have to put effort and you have to be patient and you have to work on whatever is the technology that you are using, because you have to put a lot of information and a lot of work to make something that works. And a lot of times the people that when they get the preliminary results, they think, oh, but I already knew this, you know. It's like, whenever I am predicting the traffic and I say, you know, like you are going to get a peak in the traffic flow in the morning and so on, it's like, but I mean, this is useless because this is something that I already knew. So you get this deception from the people and then they throw it away completely, which is something that I find a lot when I present my results. But if you continue working with it, and you keep on adding features, and I mean, you could get a really useful tool, but it needs to, you need to have work of both sides, not only the scientists or the data scientists, but also from the final user. And that's basically my take on your question, I guess, that I'm a little bit worried about this deception that you could get from preliminary results of the disruptive technology, basically. I don't know what my fellow speakers here, I would like to know what is their opinion also, of course.
So there are big expectations at the beginning, and then probably from the first prototype, these expectations fall suddenly. Yeah.
That's a huge problem, you know. I mean, that's my opinion, you know. Like, people are expecting a lot, and at the end, when they don't get everything they wanted, it's like, oh, but this is I don't know, and they throw it away.
Giuseppe, I think Giuseppe would like to say something.
No, I would say that, that just to support this view, that maybe this depends also about from the availability of data. That in case maybe data will be sufficient for a preliminary prototype of on artificial intelligence algorithms and so on, but then to further develop it, to further refine and evolve it, data is missing for different reasons. And this is something that's, I would say, I personally experience in different situations where the civil servants, decision maker themselves suffer, they need data for their daily activities, but they suffer lack of data due to difficulties in sharing data, also internally among them, among different departments of the same public organization, maybe. And when this happens, sometimes they encounter a problem in exploiting the shared data, because and maybe this is due because in the past departments probably worked alone, so they organized itself with their own way to manage data, to represent the information, and they have difficulties in working with data provided by other departments, because this data, even if about the same topics, the information are represented in a way that create difficulties in working with it. So in this sense, probably one of the more disruptive technology that could come first, the artificial intelligence, the digital twin, and so on, and that could represent a sort of foundation to enable them as an enabler, as are the data management platform that would allow to facilitate the sharing of data on a side from departments or big organization, and access them in a more homogeneous manner.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Samuele, would you like to add something?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to strongly agree. I think that, I mean, for my experience, I noticed that there is an important lack of, I would say, organized data from the policymakers. I mean, maybe they have, usually they lack a reliable source of data, and they don't have it in an organized or cleaned manner. So this is the most important point I would point out in this session. The need is for a proper, I mean, for a policymaker, I think, is of a proper visualization of reliable data, and that would be. It's not much, but it would already be a great step ahead for the public administration.
So do you ever find skepticism from the public administration regarding the use of data in their decision-making activities?
I'm sorry,
or this is something.
Understand the.
Do you see any mistrust towards the use of data?
Skepticism.
Yes, skepticism. Sorry.
No, not really. But the problem is to find reliable sources to get the data from. I mean, it's difficult oftentimes to get data from citizens and organizations, for example, because they obviously are not thrilling to giving out their data. You have to take them probably from a scientific or technical studies, but it's difficult for a policymaker to have them and to have them in a properly organized manner that they can use in a daily basis for their policy.
I think, if I may interrupt, I think that's a key point that you are mentioning, the fact that organized and clean, right? Because as I mentioned in my talk, I mean, one of the problems that a lot of times we face is that the data, they have a lot of data, but it's not usable by any technological, artificial intelligence or anything like that. So we had to spend like so much time organizing, cleaning, labeling data. I mean, I know that you are familiar with these problems because the half of the time it goes over there. So I just wanted to say that.
And maybe in this sense, the adoption mentioned before, so data management platform, that's fostered the adoption of common meta model and the adoption of common structure for representing data, both for what concerns the concrete data and the metadata on the other side, could help in this sense. So to enable interoperability among data produced and shared by different actors that allow also the discoverability and exploitation of this data. Otherwise, the risk is to keep the data confined, even if shared, but confined in a sort of bubbles that create difficulties in exploiting it.
Yes, I think I saw from your presentations that actually the data silos, interoperability issues are issues which are common to all the projects that we heard about. I would like to, Francesco, I didn't hear your point of view regarding my question. So in your presentation, if I'm not wrong, you were talking also about trust towards decision database decision or policy making for DECIDO. Would you like to add anything about that?
Yes. No, I just want to connect with what the other fellow speakers said. So basically, the quality of the data, it's a problem for sure. It's a problem, the willingness of the policymakers and public administration and agency to share data, because the data is basically their bargaining chips. So in order to convince basically agencies or departments inside public administration to give up their data, it's you need to give them incentives, which are, for instance, the policy push. So it's not easy at all. And for what concerns the trust comes from the data side, because population knows that public administration can use or is basically the custodian of a lot of personal data, and then it's important to anonymize those data. It's important to use cryptography in order to ensure that the owners of the data are not recognizable by triangulating, for instance, data sources or databases. And from the other hand, at the level of public procurement, there should be, let's say, at the level of public procurement of disruptive technologies, so of technologies like artificial intelligence, big data, blockchain, there is the need of procedures in order to ensure that the acquisition and the adoption and the implementation of such technologies is ethically viable and is trustworthy. In that regard, there are several actions that are put in place by public administrations also at the local level. For instance, the municipality of Amsterdam at the moment has a kind of repository of algorithms. So all the algorithms and machine learning models that are used in the city are basically registered in this repository in a transparent and explainable way, so that people can go there and can understand which kind of models are used, why they are used, and what is basically the result. And this is important for accountability also, because if you take actions, policy actions regarding, for instance, the assignment of social services and social benefit through algorithms, which is something that is done in several countries, you need to be sure that somebody is accountable for the process. So that if people wants to sue somebody, they know who to sue, basically. And this is a very interesting field of research in which especially Italy at the moment is working a lot.
Yes, I suppose that we do not have to think only about the trust the civil servants have towards these technologies, but also of citizens in the data that is being used and how it's being used, because there's all the privacy issues and so on. Okay, so connecting to what Francesco was saying, I would like to ask you another question, which actually I read an interesting sentence in the policy briefs that I was saying before, which said that one of the dangers of database decision making is cherry picking among the objective data or objective evidence to serve specific policies and decisions. So I would like to hear your point of view on that. Who would like to start? Giuseppe.
Yes. No, let's say that maybe this is a problem that does not affect only the decision makers, because the usage of, I mean, subset of data that support only a part of or only a perspective of decisions. Maybe it's a more wide and general problems. And here, the availability of public information and the possibility or the fact that maybe public decision could be published and public available with description of how data driven a specific decisions could support this, could support to avoid this kind of problems, because on a side, the rationale of a decisions and the reference to the data that supported an analysis make it transparent how the data has been analyzed to take a decision, could give the opportunity to the citizens, to the public audience, to verify this information. And here, public data, public sector information, open data could play a strong role, because they could give citizens the opportunity to verify and check the decisions of public servants. And in this sense, initiatives such as the regulation of the public sector information, or the also in some cases the initiative related to the data spaces, it is fostered that you play a more significant roles in this view.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Anybody else would like to add something to this?
Yeah, I mean, this problem of cherry picking is when you are using data methods, is something that happens all the time. I mean, even if you are not using data, as you mentioned first, Isabel, methods based on data-driven methods or data-based methods. I mean, of course, your decisions can suffer cherry picking because of two reasons, basically. One is the set of data that you have in your database is biased, okay? And that's a problem, because you only collected data coming from one side, and of course then your algorithms or your methods that you are going to use are going to suffer of that bias that you are only collecting data from one side. And obviously then the solutions or the decisions that you are going to make is something that you are going to suffer of that problem of cherry picking. And then the other problem is that you are using bad algorithms, and that's also something that you could have that problem, that you are not taking into account that you are probably doing or making a decision or a policy related to a specific a small part of the data that you have stored. For instance, I'm going to talk about the problem that Giuseppe talked to today about doing policies related to all people. I mean, of course, then you have to focus on that particular group of people that the elders that you have in your database. You cannot use the overall data that you have collected in order to obtain or to make decisions or policies related to all elders. You have to focus on that particular group of people, and you have to adapt your algorithms in order to focus on that part. but that's something that happens even if you are doing policy without using this type of new technologies or these new methods. The policymaker always should be aware of not doing cherry picker and not developing policies only for just a small group of people, or just doing the cherry picking just because, you know, not focusing on data. So in this case, I mean, whatever culture you have before is the one that you have to apply when you are doing you are using these technologies. So you have to, I don't know, be fair when you are developing policies, because otherwise, I mean, the new algorithms can help you, but they are not going to help you to change your own culture in some sense. I mean, you are the one who has to take your culture into the algorithms and your data.
Okay, so of course, if we were talking just now about trust, so of course, if we say that bad algorithms may actually produce wrong, of course, wrong decisions, then this has to be this challenge has to be addressed before these technologies get to the market. Otherwise, we're going to lose the trust after sort of the first months they are being used. We were talking about transparency and accountability. So do you think also these are tools to support addressing the cherry picking? So have reduced to reduce this this phenomenon. So how do we sort of address it, apart the bad algorithms and the data which may be focused on just one area, one section, one problem? How can we address the issue or support policymakers in not cherry picking data?
It's as Isabel, as I said, maybe on a side, we have that's concerning the transparency, the fact that when decisions are taken, if these are made apart to be made public, but also supported by data, so by the evidence, to make public also the evidence on which decisions are taken, could be part of the solution.
Samuele or Francesco, would you like to add anything?
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree with what Giuseppe said now, and with what he said before about to have the data be public, in order to let the citizens understand why what their data are used for, and why the policymakers are taking this decision instead of another. That's a good path for the acceptance of policymaking, of data-driven policymaking, but also a good way to avoid cherry picking some informations, because once you have the data in front of you, it's difficult to take one the wrong. I mean, a really wrong decision. It's obvious once you have a good visualization or a good chart, or I mean, clear data in front of you, and also the accountability that we were talking about before. I think it's another strong point in this direction.
If I may interrupt, because I don't see that making the data public can increase the level of trust of the public just because the data is there. But I don't think the public is going to look at the data at all. I mean, it's very difficult that people is going, and if you put a layer, a visualization layer, where you are going to do aggregation, or you are going to do the summary of the data and so on and so forth, you are already over there putting a layer of algorithm or something like that, where, I mean, you are already doing a bias in some sense. So the trust has to come from the mere fact that you are actually sharing everything, and they could do it, but they're never going to look at the data. I don't see the public looking at the data individually, at least.
No, maybe when we, at least from my perspective, when we say to make it public, this not means that, I mean, everyone could be able to analyze, take the data, analyze the data, and verify that the results that's driven a decision are correct or not. But maybe having the data available and explain together with the data and together with the decision that has been taken, how this data has been analyzed, how the results of the analysis driven a decision could allow part of the citizens, that could be associations, could be people with a certain level of skill, of expertise, of course, not when you say citizens, not common citizens, but citizens with that have some skills that allow them to deal with data, to understand the data, to verify the results and say, okay, these conclusions are correct or not. Pay attention because they are biased.
I was mainly talking about association more than private citizens. I mean, organizations or association of concerns citizens or.
I think that deal with data is something that's the data in some way is raw material. When you want to transfer raw material, you need to have skill, competences, knowledge, such as an handcrafter. So you need time, you need training. So not common citizens, not everyone is a handcrafter, but with time, people and with education can acquire the tools, the knowledge to manage and to understand and to analyze the data.
Okay, so today Francesco is very quiet, but I would like to hear your point of view as well.
Yeah, no, sorry, that I'm losing my voice. I thought 4 hours this morning.
Okay.
No, I completely agree with the fact that just to put the data public is not enough. Data, yeah, as Giuseppe said, it's just like raw material. It's just you know, just carbon coal that has to be turned into diamond. So it takes time, it takes pressure, and it takes skills. Yeah, probably, you know, to put the data online in a reusable way is the first step, because the more data you put, the more the people will be using them if they are in the right format, if they have the right metadata, if they are labeled in the right way. And in fact, we are working at this topic with engineering in another project which is called Spotted. That basically it's a project in which that I'm coordinating, in which we are using open data provided by cities, the city of Milan, city of Helsinki, and city of Naples, and we are combining those data with satellite data from Copernicus in order to use them to produce smart city services, especially in the management of green areas and in the management of the urban transformation. So I think that yeah, to have data available, it's very important, but also the transformative part, it's even more important. And the European Commission is pushing a lot. For instance, the recast of the public sector information recommendation is basically pushing to increase the quantity of public sector information that will be made publicly available in, let's say, in the high value data sets categories. So the categories that the European Commission deemed to be very high value, like statistics, company statistics like Earth observation, but also in other subjects. So I think that yeah, it's the first step in order to, let's say, increase transparency is for sure to provide data, but also it can be an important push for developing new products and new services.
Yes, and I was wondering also if the co-creation that some of you have already spoken about during your presentation, so involving sort of stakeholders in all the process, could that also help to make sure that the data is used in the right way and there's no cherry picking and everybody feels trust towards the process and so on?
Yeah, co-creation is very important, but also in this case, you know, co-creation needs training. Co-creation needs time. For instance, we are having a co-creation section with the municipality of Milan on the 31st of May within the scope of the Spotted project. And of course, it takes time for everybody to go to Milan. It takes effort for everybody to go to Milan. It takes the fact that the municipality of Milan has in-house trained personnel that is able to carry out the co-creation workshop. So it's a whole process that is not easy to implement, and also the selection of the citizens and stakeholders that take part to the co-creation session is very, very important. Otherwise, you are not really taking into account all the voices. A typical example is citizen science. Most of the citizen scientists, so people that are involved in scientific research as a citizens, so not as trained, not as professional scientists. Most of these people is people from middle upper class, people from that have a high education, and the same thing for co-creation. Most of the people that is able to get involved into co-creation activities as people that do not have to worry that much about arriving to the end of the month, you know, with their wage, or that, and it's people that's quite educated in general. So co-creation is very good, it's very interesting, but it has to be also complemented with other, let's say, more passive user research activities.
Okay, thank you, Francesco. Now we have last 7 minutes of our session. So I would like to do a round table with one last question. So if you could choose just one challenge that you think we should address to enable data-driven decision making or policy making, which one would you choose? And before you answer, I would like to invite also the audience, if you would like to add it to the chat, so that then we can look also at your answers. So you can choose one each. And Iñaki, would you like to start?
Sure, and this is something that we already mentioned several times, and it's the quality of the data. The fact that, I mean, everything starts with the amount of data, if the data is present or not, and the quality. I mean, that's something that I think it should be about everything. So this was easy for me. I mean.
Thank you. Giuseppe.
Connected to what Ignacio already said, so to the quality is the interoperability, so the adoption of linked technologies for linked data, adoption of semantics, adoption of ontology to describe the data, the adoption of metadata, and adoption of data to make to reduce the effort in complying and facing data represented with different formats. So this means a solution for to provide uniform access to heterogeneous data that could come from diverse and heterogeneous sources.
Okay, so not only the data, the amount of data, but also the interoperability and how the possibility to use this data. Samuele, would you like to add your challenge?
Yes, sorry, it was muted. Yeah, I agree with the interoperability and quality of the data, because a lot of times the most difficult, the most time-consuming part is the beginning of the process, data cleaning, etc. I would also add probably acceptance of these new methods by policymakers and the general public. So another challenge, I think, it would be the acceptance. Other than quality and interoperability, would have been my first choices, but.
Okay, so having some prototypes which go extra, do a little bit extra, as Iñaki was saying, so not only simple simulations, simple decisions, but something, once we have more data, then probably more interesting prototypes of what you can actually do. Francesco, your turn.
From my side, two main challenges. So one, as we said, so transparency in the adoption of disruptive technologies, especially artificial intelligence. On the other hand, the political willingness to include co-creation, let's say, in all the decision-making process. So oftentimes co-creation, or anyway listening to stakeholders, is just something that is done pro forma. It's a tick boxing, box ticking, nice to have. On the other hand, it would be really useful to have co-creation as the norm, the involvement of stakeholders as the norm in developing decisions and in developing pilots, for instance.
Okay, and I saw that all the 4 projects that we actually saw today involve co-creation. So we are starting towards that, supporting policymakers in understanding the strength of and the importance of co-creation. Okay, so we have completed the session. We have just 3 minutes. I don't know if there are any questions that have come up. Okay, I think it's a challenge that someone has posted, someone from the audience. It says, we miss unique ways to define the variables across disciplines. Nobody and no machine can understand a data set without having, sorry, it's gone, without, okay, without having clear what the variable refers to. I don't know if you got that, and if anybody would like to add anything.
Yes, this is maybe is related also to what we mentioned before. So the adoption of ontologies and semantic to describe the data. That's could simplify this. But also maybe another dimension that's could be interesting is education, because dealing with data requires mentioned skills that maybe for sure needs times to be acquired, and this could start from the beginning of the education process, as we are seeing in these recent activities with coding activities in primary schools, but something similar that's educate people from the beginning to understand the data.
Okay, so this came from Carlo Lacagnina in the audience. So thank you, Carlo. And if you would like other replies or other information, just you can contact me or Sonia, and we can provide you even more information. So if there aren't any other questions or challenges you would like to add, I would like to thank you all, Iñaki, Samuele, Francesco, and Giuseppe, and Sonia,
Thank you.
for participating in the session. Very interesting indeed. And we will be in touch. And thank you very much again. And thank you for the audience for listening and posing the question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you
goodbye.
Very much.
Bye.
Bye.